I talk time and time again about how there's no such thing as a perfect liturgy. And this morning there was an example of that, in that the gospel passage didn't have the little sticker on it that it usually has. And so Deacon Chuck and I had an exchange where he asked me, is this the right gospel that you prepared to preach for? And it's a good thing he did, because if he had read a different gospel than that one, then my sermon would make no sense. So that's good news for me. And for him too. But it is an interesting gospel passage, isn't it? Because Jesus asks some questions. He asks his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they answer him. And then he says, "Okay, who do you think that I am? Who do you say that I am?" And Peter, of course, correctly tells him that you are the Son of the living God. Now, there are lots of different ways that we can read this interaction. And I don't know that any of them are right or wrong, but we get to choose, as critical readers, we get to choose how we want to interpret it. And so we could say, maybe Jesus is testing the disciples. Maybe he's testing them to see, how well have you guys been listening to me? Who do you say that I am? And that's one way to look at it, and I don't think it's wrong. But we could look at it different ways too. We could look at it and we could say that maybe he's kind of testing the weather and seeing how well have other people been listening to my message? Do I need to change things up a little bit? Kind of like, I wonder how effective I have been so far. Do you think people are picking up on what I'm trying to teach them? And that's another good way to read it. My favorite way to read it, though, is to read it as if Jesus is giving us an example of how to do discernment. Because those are questions that are important for us to ask from time to time. And sometimes the answers change as we grow and we learn. Who do people say that I am? In other words, who am I really? How am I perceived by other people? Now, if I were to ask this question 15 years ago, the answer would have been different then than it is today. I belonged to a different denomination. I was married to a different woman. I worked in a different field. I had fewer gray hairs. I lived in a different state, and I really wasn't the same person 15 years ago that I am now. And people then would have said I was someone very different 15 years ago than people would say I am now. And the same goes for you. If I ask you, who do you say that I am? Well, 15 years ago, the answer would have been very different. You wouldn't have called me 15 years ago to be your rector. I mean, to start, I wasn't even an Episcopalian, let alone ordained. And I was kind of a mess back then. And I'm still kind of a mess. But maybe not as much of a mess. And today, I'm in the right place at the right time, and I'm glad to be here serving as your priest. And when we do discernment, we continue to ask those questions, knowing that the answers change. We don't want to dwell on our assumptions that we had from 15 years ago. Sometimes the answers change, and it's helpful for us to be open to constructive feedback. Because we want our values to match up with the way people perceive us to be. And human nature dwells within this bizarre paradox that people are much more likely to recognize changes that have taken place within them over the past 10 years than they are to anticipate the changes that might take place over the next 10 years. Humans grow. We change. And while our identities stay the same in some ways, in other ways, they change pretty drastically. And the same is true for society as a whole. The United States has changed a lot in the last 250 or so years that we've been a country. We started off as 13 British colonies on the east coast of the North American continent. Colonies that didn't necessarily have a whole lot to do with each other, but eventually they decided that there was strength in numbers, and those 13 colonies declared independence from England, fought a revolutionary war, and after winning independence from England and becoming the United States, the country grew and expanded westward and acquired more territory. And you could argue and say some of this territory was taken fairly, it was purchased. Some of it was taken forcefully. But some of it that was purchased from other colonizing powers. The Louisiana Purchase, which gave the United States a huge chunk of real estate, came from France, but France probably didn't really have the right to sell it to us in the first place because it belonged to the indigenous people of the land before France got a hold of it. And what about the land we're standing on right now? Well, this used to be Mexico. And before that, it was Spain. And before that, again, it belonged to the indigenous peoples. And for years and years and years, the way of the world was to conquer other people and to take their land. Arizona was taken by the U.S. from Mexico, and Mexico took it from Spain, and Spain took it from the Native Americans. That's just what European colonizers did. Now, we may be an ocean away from the European continent, but life in this country is very heavily influenced by European culture. And eventually, the United States occupied land from coast to coast. But that wasn't enough. You see, in the 1890s, the United States was at war with Spain, fighting over occupation of the Philippines. And during that time of war, American lawmakers realized it would probably be pretty valuable if we could set up a naval station somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The city of Honolulu on the island of Oahu in the Kingdom of Hawaii made for an excellent stopping point between the U.S. mainland and Asia. And the Kingdom of Hawaii allowed an American military presence to set up on Oahu. And American businessmen made money on the islands in sugarcane. And many of these businessmen organized a coup d'etat and overthrew the Hawaiian government in 1893. Queen Liliuokalani, the Hawaiian monarch, was imprisoned by these Americans in her own palace, Iolani Palace, for over an entire year. In 1897, the United States government decided to annex Hawaii as a U.S. territory. The Hawaiian government never authorized this takeover. Hawaii, in all its beauty and its strategic location, was now American soil. The Hawaiian Islands were and still are a valuable foothold in the Pacific for the nation's defense. The U.S. Pacific Fleet to this day is still headquartered in Pearl Harbor on Oahu. And in fact, in 1941, the island's strategic location didn't go unnoticed. The Empire of Japan attacked the American military targets in Pearl Harbor and Hickam Field on Oahu, destroying many American battleships and airplanes stationed there. Most famously, the ship that shares the name of the state that we are living in, the USS Arizona. The Arizona sits at the bottom of Pearl Harbor today and serves as a final resting place for 1,177 U.S. servicemen who died during the attack. And to this day, many indigenous Hawaiians are resentful that the islands were overthrown. They insist that the land was taken unfairly and unlawfully. And you know what? They aren't wrong. The annexation of Hawaii is complex and emotionally charged. The islands were not ours. They became ours, but the Hawaiian people maintain a legitimate claim to them. If you drive around the islands today, you'll see a number of Hawaiian flags flying upside down. And you know that the international symbol for distress is an upside-down national flag. Hawaiian sovereignty activists believe that the Hawaiian nation still exists and is illegally occupied by the United States. They want their land returned, and who can blame them? And yet, at the same time, we have to ask ourselves, what would life be like on the islands without American influence, without American dollars, without American military protection. And who is to say? Who are we? Who do others say that we are? I think it's safe to say that today we are now a country that will never again annex an island kingdom against its own will. Essentially, American businessmen went to Iolani Palace. They said, "We like this place," and they claimed it as their own. But that's what England used to do, and that's what Spain used to do, and it's what France used to do. It's what the Dutch did. It's what the Germans did. Colonizers have always colonized. And I don't think we're colonizers anymore. We were once, we are not now. The answer to this question has changed. Now, if the United States were to ask Native Hawaiians who we are, they might tell us something different than we might think for ourselves. And the same is likely true for the people of Mexico and for people around the rest of the world. Who we say we are and who others say we are might not yield the same answer. Although there is no plan to return Hawaii to sovereignty, we still must discern our relationship with Hawaii and her people, the Kama'aina. How do we do our best to take care of sacred Hawaiian land, perpetuating Hawaiian culture, keeping the Hawaiian language intact, and living in a world where Hawaii is part of the United States? Ua mau ke ea o ka aina I ka pono. That's the Hawaiian state motto. It means the life of the land is perpetuated in righteousness. The land is sacred. The islands are sacred. The people of the islands are sacred. We know recently that Maui was devastated by fires. The climate of the world is changing, and Maui just isn't getting as much rain as it used to. It's hotter there and it's drier. The beautiful, charming town of Lahaina, which once served as the capital of the Hawaiian kingdom, has been completely destroyed. And hundreds of people are reported dead or still missing. A piece of the body of Christ, which, as Paul wrote to us today, consists of all the people of the world, was hurt, was damaged. And when a piece of the body is injured, the entire body suffers. The people of Maui are hurting, and we can walk alongside them in their suffering. Who do we say we are? Who do others say we are? We now have an opportunity to be who we are called to be. We have a chance to show our love to the people of Hawaii, the Kama'aina, Kanaka and Haole alike. Fire built the islands, and fire destroyed part of the islands. It's happened again, and it will happen. It's happened before, and it'll happen again. The Big Island, after all, is home to 2 active volcanoes, and lava is unpredictable. In the past, it has destroyed towns and cities. And if the climate continues to change, fires will become even more common. We're very small in the grand scheme of things. We're smaller than sovereign governments. We're smaller than hostile takeovers. We're smaller than fires or volcanoes. And we can't peel back over a century of hurt and hostility. But we can love. And in fact, the Hawaiian word aloha literally means love. When you greet someone in the Hawaiian language, you greet that person with love. The aloha spirit, the spirit of love and togetherness, can unite us all in the body of Christ. We are united in aloha. We are united in love. Who do we say that we are? Who do other people say that we are? We can follow the example of our ohana in Hawaii and live aloha. We can be a people of love. We can be a people of caring and compassion and togetherness. Now, we can say for ourselves that that is who we are, but we know it's true when someone else says it about us. When someone who has been a recipient of our aloha acknowledges us and says we are a people of aloha, then we know it's true. Our Christian ohana, our Christian family, transcends governments or borders or boundaries or oceans. It transcends fires and disasters. It transcends takeovers and violent attacks. Our Christian ohana is an ohana of aloha. May we always do our best to learn from the past and to do better. May we never again hostilely take over a foreign land. And may we take this opportunity to show our aloha to our kama'aina ohana. Live aloha. Live love.